the extent I have, is that the craft of it and the challenge to myself is interesting. I mean, for instance, when Bob, one of the last pieces Bob commissioned for me was the piece I did about Rauschenberg, who I have a lot of issues with. But I'd never really written about Rauschenberg, or not at length. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. John's, somebody just added, there's a John's Catalog Raisonné coming out. I wrote a piece a long time ago about John's, in which I feel I said, again, what I had to say about John's. So, and it's people Ellsworth Kelly, I wrote about a number of times. There's a bunch of stuff about him in New Art City. I don't know that I would have much to say about it again. Judd, I've written about, there's a whole chapter about him in New Art City, but I don't know, somehow this collection, I felt like there was something more I could do with it. So, it's like, I feel like it's often what you bring, and in terms of if you go to attack something, I think the kind of intellectual challenge of it has to be really engaging. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I'm always very concerned about when I do one of those things is I really want to feel I understand where the supporters are coming from, so that it's not just lobbying stuff. And of course, it's fun. People love when you get off the funny lines. I mean, and sometimes when it's depressing, it's good to have a few jokes and some good kind of laugh lines. But there's also got to be an argument that. I was very pleased. Like at some point after I did my Richter piece, Peter Sheldall was reviewing some Richter, I think a gallery show, and he said something like, "You kind of can't now deal with Richter without kind of Jed Pearl's pieces somewhere in there." Mm-hmm. And for me, that's saying, okay, it's it's part of that. We're so tired of that term, but it's part of the conversation, But listen, that's that's kind of an intellectual challenge and a writing challenge to do that,
Well, you've written a lot of different ways but in terms of that writing challenge and intellectual challenge, how would you say that you felt like your approach to criticism has evolved over your life of writing? Because I've been trying to work out as I was reading it, like, it's interesting because you really care about like what it looks like, but there isn't the kind of formal analysis that we come to expect from a certain kind of art writing, which is extremely kind of meticulous visual description. And so I'm wondering like how you've engaged with the terms of the criticism over time.
I guess I find that most close formal analysis, not all, but much close formal analysis, if it goes on too long, is hard to read, I find. Okay, I mean, and look at Judd, he'll say two sentences, he's very quick. And one of the things I do when I go, I don't take a lot of notes. If I'm going out of town to see something and I'm not, going to be back, like go to see a museum show in another town, I'll like make notes about how many galleries there were, if the galleries are, if I think I might want to talk about the installation, the colors of the galleries, I'll make notes because I'm not sure I'll be able to reconstruct it, or even the people in the press team may not be a help. But I found that sometimes note-taking gets too granular, and so like part of what I'm looking for is phrases will occur to me, and like I will write down phrase, like something about the colors, or like something that encapsulates what I'm experiencing. So I feel at this point that somehow if you can get something that's quicker and striking, that's the way to kind of engage readers about how it looks. I don't know if that answers your question. Now, in terms of my evolution, I mean, it's funny. I mean, I sometimes I'll read pieces I wrote 10 or 15 years ago, and especially one of the incredible privileges I had at the New Republic is nobody ever told me how long something had to be, so I could, and I would write these sort of meandering things about going to galleries, and I would go from this artist to this artist, and then I'd go on a little kind of jaunt about something else. And sometimes I read them afterwards, and I'm like, a year or two after they come out, I think, how can anybody follow this? I mean, but on the other hand, I've had people say to me, "Oh, I loved that little part about, something," and I had been, and it may have happened like that. I had just looked at the piece a few months before. I thought that was just crazy. I should have taken that out. So, I think I may take fewer little jaunts now, but it also is because book writing has become a bigger thing for me. Mm-hmm. And in a way, in book writing, you can do that on a kind of larger scale in a way. It's funny, I mean, like Duchamp's kind of The Great Love is Like This One, Mary Reynolds, where in the Calder I kind of had various descriptions by people of her, and she's very sort of charismatic, beautiful, interesting, independent woman. I mean, so, I don't know, there's never, it's always evolving, and you kind of try one thing, you try another.
Well, with the books, it feels like you really moved your attention to the first half of the 20th century. And I wonder, how do you feel, what's the difference between writing this kind of historically based perspective and then versus writing contemporary criticism?
Well, I think, the me has a different place in the thing in criticism. I mean, I do think that what we want in criticism is a particular person confronting things, and if and over a period of time, as you read the person, you get to know things about them. Mm-hmm. Like, I've had people say to me, "Oh, you really like bright colors," or, I mean, that seems silly, but I've had people say things to me about my sensibility that they kind of deduced from reading me over a period of time. Mm-hmm. So I mean, when I'm sitting down to write a piece of criticism, the first question is, what did I think and feel about it? What do I think and feel about it? Mm-hmm. Even if it's something like Judd, which, is, I mean, a lot of the writing is 50 or 60 years old, that's about my engagement with that book, okay, and my thinking about it. People do write whole books that way, but for me, the book writing tends to be, the me is more submerged in a way in some larger or different kind of movement of things. I think so. That's yeah.
How have you felt or navigated writing about people that you know personally or that you're in a kind of milieu with?
The answer I've generally given to this is, when I write about somebody I don't know, I almost try to imagine I know them. Mm. And when I write about somebody I do know, I try to forget them. I mean, I think truly, you know. And, inevitably, you end up knowing people you write about to one degree or another. Mm-hmm. The interesting thing that's happened to me over the years is, because I've always kind of walked my own line, and, when I was young,